Brother Barnes, your recovery Bible study guy, and for about 6 weeks I have been wanting to do a video on Exodus 18. This is just lodged in my brain. It is a wonderful passage. It's rather lengthy, so if you'll stick with me, I think that you will appreciate this lesson and the insights that come from this. I've heard some people say that in this modern age we process more information in a day than many people 100 years ago processed their entire lives. And there's a story from the Old Testament about Moses, and he was being the judge of the entire Israelite crowd. Roughly 2 million people had left Egypt. They were in the middle of the wilderness, and every day Moses was being the judge of their disputes. And here's the story about it. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, now came to visit Moses in the wilderness. He brought Moses' wife and 2 sons with him. They arrived while Moses and the people were camped near the mountain of God. One interesting trivia is that Moses' wife was a Cushite, which is Ethiopian. And another piece of trivia is that Jethro was a priest of Midian, which was on the other side of the Red Sea from where Ethiopia is shown on the ancient map that I just looked at. Skipping a few verses down, after Jethro had arrived, the next day Moses took his seat to hear the people's disputes against each other. They waited before him from morning until evening. Can you imagine the lines? When Moses' father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he asked, "What are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this alone, while everyone stands around you from morning till evening?" Moses replied, "Because the people come to me and get a ruling from God. When a dispute arises, they come to me, and I am the one who settles the case between the quarreling parties. I inform the people of God's decrees and give them his instructions." Jethro says, "This is not good. You're going to wear yourself out, and the people too. This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. Now listen to me, and let me give you a word of advice, and may God be with you. You should continue to be the people's representative before God, bringing their disputes to him. Teach them God's decrees and give them his instructions. Show them how to conduct their lives. But select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's common disputes, but have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the smaller matters themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace." Moses listened to his father-in-law's advice and followed his suggestions. He chose capable men from all over Israel and appointed them as leaders over the people. He put them in charge of groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. These men were always available to solve the people's common disputes. They brought the major cases to Moses, but they took care of the smaller matters themselves. Soon after this, Moses said goodbye to his father-in-law, who returned to his own land. Well, as you would guess, Brother Barnes would like to make a few observations. Number one, wasn't it nice that Moses' father-in-law had taken care of his daughter, Moses' wife, and these children? They may not have been with Moses on the pathway out of Egypt. We don't know. But for some time they were under the care of their uh, grandfather, these grandchildren, and the wife of Moses was in the care of her father. How comforting. Another observation is this. Jethro said, "This is not good." Well, don't we kind of get offended just a little bit when someone gives us unsolicited advice? Doesn't that happen? And don't we get our backs up in the air when that happens? I'm going to propose that when we have trusted friends in our lives, when we have relationships with good people, then when they give us advice, it will not be difficult for us to heed it. Moses listened to his father-in-law's advice and followed his suggestions. I've always heard people say, delegate, delegate, delegate. I'm not good at this, and I would honestly tell you that I'm not an administrator. I'm just a brother in the struggle. But are there times in your life when you are taking on way too much on your own? You know it deep down inside. Sometimes there may be relief on the way, and it may be up to your friends or family to help you see what needs to come next. The beauty of all of this is the majesty of what Jethro said to Moses. And if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures. The implication is that Moses would ask God, what do you think about this plan? It's good for us to pray about big decisions in our lives. Let us not be afraid to take advice. Let us not be afraid to delegate to capable and willing people. And at all times, let us ask God. And I think that if it's in God's will, it will roll out as it should. This is Brother Barnes, kind of an imperfect presentation, but quite a throwdown of information. But I just love this. I have been dwelling on this for 6 weeks, and I just haven't had time to spend on it. So if you have reflections, put them in the comments under this video in YouTube. Please share this with like-minded people. And comment in YouTube. I kind of mentioned that a minute ago. That is what creates a community. I love you, and keep coming back.